Gary Beck talked to me about this, said that, when you went over to the minor team, bringing your centrifugal clutch knowledge with you was what made such a huge difference for them over there too.
Well, yeah. I think it did help them, get on course. They'd sort of strayed away with the spring stuff. They had some very advanced spring clutch deals, but it was hard to maintain. And remember, a lot of this stuff was pre data logger, uh, and that was a whole new deal. So you had to be real careful to try and get the car to repeat. It was one of those deals where, boy, you better be thinking, well, gee, I did this. Now, what could this possibly have? How could this possibly influence the rest of the run? Well, a little luck of the draw involved there too. I mean, yeah, we made, we did well winning that race and everything, and had the consistency, but we learned a lot in the match race circuit. Newman was right. There was a lot to be learned out there.
Yeah. As far as your career, Terry, I know that when us as fans, and trust me, I'm a fan first, when we look at this, the U.S. Nationals, of course, in my mind, is the pinnacle of Terry Capp's career, but I'm guessing that that's probably not the way you view it, is it?
No, I'd say you're right there. That was the one that like winning the Stanley Cup if you're a hockey player type of deal. And, everybody, that's sort of what you shoot for. And, we were fortunate with that. And of course, a lot of the other races that we had, and, especially on the national trail, were like memorable. And I was thankful for the success that we had there, with Bernie and Wes Van Dusen and whatever crew people we had, whether it was Ron Baxter or Mo Barrel or even Al Ma, who helped us out quite a bit as well. Bernie had him trained, and Rob Flynn. Rob Flynn hung around the car quite a bit, and Bernie sort of mentored him and such. And look what he turned out to be. He's kicking butt now.
Well, this wasn't the only big event that you guys won. I mean, you got some AHRA wins in here, including what? Some national titles on the AHRA, or was it IHRA?
We won the Tulsa Grand American Series. I think that was IHRA, thinking back in '74. And then we had some AHRA events as well. I don't think I think the HRA races that we had probably was with the Royal Canadian or the Bubble Up car. We raced more AHRA after Bernie went south, and I don't think we. Yeah, oh no, I'm wrong. I think we did quite well at the opening of Spokane. Matter of fact, Ed the Ace McCullough and ourselves made the first pass down that quarter mile at the very first drag race they had at that new facility in Spokane. Yeah, that's right. So we bashed our heads there a bit too. So and I think we won that race, and so did Ace. Maybe we were the only ones there, but nonetheless we did.
Did you guys ever, my hometown track here is Great Lakes Dragway in Union Grove, Wisconsin. Did you guys ever manage to get down there to that track or not?
Not me, but Bernie, I'm sure did.
Yeah, we went there a few times with Force, actually, I guess. And yeah, there was a lot of history in that one.
I remember you guys being there. I was there. I remember when you guys came through, and we, at one point or another, Bernie, we had that. It is the oldest continuously operating drag strip in America. And I tell you, my youth spent down at that track. There wasn't anybody that didn't come through that track. We saw everybody come through, and I do remember Force coming through.
Yeah, and of course, Coyle told me a lot of stories about it. He was there so much, and it was a Chi-Town car. And,
oh yeah,
yeah, that was so. Yeah, there were some good stories there.
Yeah, most of them we can't talk about here. A lot of fun stuff went on down there. I spent I don't know if you want to call it wasted youth, but I spent my youth down there. And you know, the thing that I never realized, guys, was that I I always wanted to be involved in drag racing, and I would have been happy to just be a tire wiper. I didn't know that I could have been a tire wiper. It would never occurred to me that I could have gone to one of these racing teams, you know, like Jerry Newman, and said, "Hey, you need some guy to show up and volunteer on the weekends." I didn't know I could do that. Otherwise, I would have been doing it.
Well, there was a lot of teams that had volunteers. You know, we go to the Winter Nationals, and specifically Jason Rupert, who was up and coming young guy. Well, he's catching up to some of us, but he was always there, wanted to help us. You know, Bernie would specifically have him go get water. You know, this is when we were running blocks that even aluminum blocks that had water jackets. He'd say, "Okay, well, go get another 5 gallons of water," and then we'd pour it in, and then we'd just run it out again just to keep him busy, type of thing. Bernie always had a method, you know, and so you know, volunteers, and we've had them before, and of course, you know, they got to be watched. But Bernie, he picked and chose the right guys, and it was worked out quite well. But I'm sure that you probably could have got on there. There was something you missed out, Randy.
I know, I know.
There's still time.
You know, I don't know if I'm 55. I'm still doing okay, but I don't know if I could bend over and wipe tires anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you can lift the body on a funny car.
There you
Look
go.
like a tough guy.
Yeah. What a one-handed body lift deal is. Yeah, you got to be young and herky for that.
Well, speaking of Rupert, I saw the name show up on a drag strip last weekend, and I got a hold of Carl Olson right away. And I'm like, "Hey, Carl, what's the?" I see the Rupert name out there, and I saw the name Black Plague on the front of that funny car. And he's like, "Oh yeah, all of us old guys sitting down in section 24 were cheering like crazy when they made the program."
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, his dad was instrumental, and matter of fact, Saskatoon Raceway, where we frequented often, Jason's dad married the sister of Les Howard, the guy that was the promoter of that track, right? Yeah, so that's how these things happen. That's what happens when drag racers go out of town, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Frank was a great racer. Yeah.
Yeah.
He drove some good cars, some of those front engine cars, Eagle Electric and all those. So he drove some good stuff.
Well, I couldn't, you know, it was one of them things where I had to do a double take. Carl Olson's a friend, and I know his history extremely well. And when I saw that name Black Plague on the front of that car, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute here. So I was glad to see some hit. It's neat to see the history in the sport. That's what I love. You know, every now and then you get that little glimpse of the past in our current NHRA, and it's really neat. And I know a lot of people, your pedestrian sort of fan doesn't know any of that stuff, but for me, it's really neat to see that.
Well, that's how you're helping, you know, get it out there with deals like this, right? And you know, we got the nostalgia funny cars, and I actually raced Jason a few times with the Bubble Up car, and when he had the nostalgia, that was the black. It's always been the Black Plague, but that brought great memories back. You know, here we raced against his dad, and now we're racing against the son, type of deal. It's kind of ironic, but nice that we're still all around to do that.
Yeah, they definitely their family definitely lived drag race, and there's that was their deal. Man. Yeah.
Did you guys ever race any of those? I realized that by the time you guys were doing Top Fuel, a lot of those legendary SoCal tracks were closed. Did you get to race any of them other than OCIR? Did you ever get down to Lions? Did you ever get down to any of those tracks?
We went there as fans to Lions, but we never. I don't think we ever actually raced any events down there that I can recall.
No, we didn't.
Lions is one of those tracks that always fascinates me. As a matter of fact, Carl Olson and me and I believe Steve Reyes now are sort of collaborating on a book that we're doing about the last race, December 2nd, 1972 at Lions. So it's a hell of a track. It's one of them storied deals.
Yeah, like Orange County, these tracks have so much history. I
Yeah.
mean, we we ended up winning the last drag race at Orange County with Beck, and that was I just thought about that the other day. Actually, it was kind of a neat experience. Not a little different feel though than Lions, but still a win at one of those iconic tracks was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what I believe, what was it, 19, God, well, I want to say it was 1983 was the last time they held was it the finals they held there?
No, yeah, they held the finals there, but then they had the last drag race was I guess later on that before after the season ended basically,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Well, so this is where we've kind of reached that point where paths split here. Um, so Terry, why don't I start with you? Bernie, I asked Gary Beck about this. I said, "What'd you do? Did you go over and steal Terry Capp's mechanic, or what's the deal here?" And he goes, "No, I didn't. We didn't steal them, or maybe I did. That's what he said." But anyway, so your paths diverge here. So Terry, where did you? What was next for you?
Well, after that, Bernie had the opportunity, and you have to strike when opportunity knocks. And I was hated to see him go as a friend and as a neighbor and such, but on to greener pastures, because we were at the point where all the big sponsors were coming in, the breweries and so on and so forth, and we just weren't in a position to do that, because I had family here and business here, and it just wasn't going to materialize. So consequently, when Bernie's opportunity came up and he went south, that was just great for him. And of course, I missed him not only as a partner, a friend, a crew chief. Uh, it was hard to see him go, but it was for the better. So after that, I didn't do a hell of a lot, and I even got to the point where I wouldn't even bother looking at National Dragster until my longtime friend Ron Hudson came around and he says, "We're going to the Winter Nationals." And I says, "Oh, good, have a good time," that type of thing. And he says, "No, no, no, you're coming." And I just kind of let things slide, type of deal. I came home from work one day, and Rochelle, my wife, said, "Ron left an envelope there for you." So I thought, okay, what does he want? Well, there you are. There's, we're going to the Winter Nationals, plane tickets, right? So we went to the Winter Nationals. And of course, that's in the spring. And by mid season that year, he put together the Royal Canadian top fuel car. And we campaigned that and raced Spokane and Seattle and a few race tracks like that. And I think Saskatoon, it kind of kept it local, but it ran well. And Gordon Jenner was kind of tuning it up, and Dale Adams was involved with the car too. So we had some really, really good guys. And Ron pulled one of his mechanics out of the dealership, Dan Brochu, and he helped with the tune-up and such. And we had a lot of fun with that. And after putting that on the shelf for a while, Ron decided that it must be time to bring out a new Bubble Up, the second generation Bubble Up Nostalgia Funny car. So that kind of hit the drawing board, and it came to fruition, and consequently, we ran that with crew chiefs like Roland Leong and Bob Papernick, which is a local fella here that had a successful drag racing career back in the '70s and such, and he was on board, and we raced that quite a bit, and then in between there somewhere we brought on an update. Well, actually, Rob Flynn was working for Bob Vandergriff at that time, and Ron Hodgson says, "Capp wants to go 300. You better bring that car to Canada." So he did all the legwork, and the logistics all worked out. So sure enough, it showed up here at the Rocky Mountains, and it was a new edition of the Royal Canadian. And my first pass out, it went 306 or 7 miles an hour. And my wife said, "Well, I guess that's it. You went 300. Time to go home." Well, that didn't work. we eventually, that was an IHRA race, and I think we ran 478 or something along those lines and 319 miles an hour. And we lost to Clay Milliken. And that's kind of a controversial deal, the way that the tree functioned at that point in time. Bernie was watching it and he phoned me and he said, something's screwy with that tree. And we won't go into that because it's politics type of deal. But nonetheless, we raced that car in Spokane after that. And then again, like I said, the bubble up car raced that up until I think must have been about 2010. And that moved on and a new bubble up came up, which is the third generation, with Ron's middle son, Ryan, has been successful with that car. But he's got Jim Basco on board as tuning it and such. And that's kind of where that is. And of course, I'm retired again, but not done.
Well, just so we get it on the record here, it was 4.75 at 319.37 miles an hour. Is that the fastest run you ever made?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I got to ask you from a layman's point of view, me, is there a huge difference in a car between 275 and 320 miles an hour?
Big time.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. Is when we were running 242, 245, 247, and all of a sudden I think we were the fifth top fuel car to run 250, and I noticed that. Well, you try going 300 in a quarter mile an hour, that finish line was there before I do it.
What I've always been amazed by, Terry, is the fact that I've been in a couple of near misses at accidents, and I've always theorized that it feels like time slows down, but I think your brain speeds up. Is that the same thing that happens when you're in a fuel car?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a situation like every driver drives different. And I was watching the funny cars last week at the Winter Nationals, and with the cameras they have right now, and watching some of the drivers like Ron Capps. I keep close tabs on him because there's a going joke between. First of all, he was asked, or I was asked, you Terry Capp related? Are you guys brothers? Well, that went by until I got older and he got a little older, and then he'd say, no, where he's my uncle. And now last time I saw him, I said, so now you just say that I'm your grandfather? Is that how that works? But I watch these guys up close, and they're pre-staging the car, and even when they're staging the car with the onboard camera, you can see them breathing, and I'm thinking, God, I never did that. I pre-stage a car and I wouldn't breathe until I let go of the brake, right? But it happens. It does happen rapidly, like it's quick. But I know I've heard guys say that you got to make sure that your brain is going to catch up to what's going on. Well, I'm into the future. My brain is at the end of the quarter mile and just waiting for me to get there.
Well, we'll come back to that. I like that. Bernie, so you are recruited by, was it Gary that recruited you, or was it Larry that recruited you? How did you end up over in the minor camp?
Gary called me, and they were kind of struggling, and their clutch program was in trouble, and they had some other issues too, but mainly the clutch deal. And so anyway, Gary called up and said, well, why don't you come give us a hand for a bit, and well, Ron Baxter and I had a cylinder head shop at the time, and I said, well, no, I'd have to, I'll have to check with my wife, Mary, of course, and and if everyone agrees, if all parties agree, then maybe we can talk. So I checked with the upper management, and so as to speak, and they all said, no, go ahead, go to a race with them, so see if you like it or something. So I did, and I ended up going down there, and we actually ran pretty well, but we were blowing up the engines. We had some experimental pistons and stuff in it, and the guys had thought were pretty good. We were going to be good, but they weren't, as it turned out. And uh, so,
Well, Bernie, you got to admit, not admit, but we have to agree on this that during us racing up here in Canada, and when Beck moved here, uh, Bernie and Gary worked together quite closely, which helped both us out. And Beck was instrumental in making us as good as we were, actually, right?
yes, that's true. Yeah, yeah, he helped us a lot.
Well, for you, Bernie, that program it was something. I mean, I've thought about this. You've got what ended up being Gary Beck's pinnacle year, driving that dragster for Larry Minor, but at the same time, you've got Ed McCulloch in there. Were you still around when didn't they bring Dick LaHaye in at one point too? Wasn't he part of that whole camp?
Well, Larry sponsored Dick and would put him on the Miller High Life program, and so yeah, we had lots of talented guys to talk about, but we actually this was a little prior to that, where the area we're talking about, and we were we kind of aligned ourselves a little bit with Lanny Puglisi, well, actually his dad, and they had L&T clutches, and Tony, of course, was a real good mind when it came to those clutches, and so he gave us a little guidance and stuff, and helped us with better maybe maybe experimental parts a little bit and stuff, and so we did we had the advantage of having some good experienced guys, so.
Well, I mean, you guys had to be stretched, during like 80, 83, 84, 85, during that period, you guys had to be stretched really thin with everything that was going on. And Larry was driving a car, you had Gary in a car, you had Ed McCulloch in a car. I mean, that's a lot of stuff going, a lot of moving parts.
Where did Cruz come into this picture, Bernie?
Well, he when we added Miller to the program, of course, and anyway, they wanted a dragster and a funny car, and Cruz was available for the funny car, and Ed Ed was going to drive the dragster, and ended up in a situation where it looked like the program had plenty of potential, but we were blowing the body off the funny car, and that, of course, that was in my lap, and so anyway, we ended up parting company at that point, and so.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it turned out to be a good move. It's one of those. I wasn't in the unemployment line for too long, but as a matter of fact, I never really missed a race. But
well, Larry Minor, I've always heard that Larry Minor could be difficult. He had his own ideas about how things should happen, but at the same time, I also heard that Larry Minor was a heck of a racing mind. I mean, he just had a good mind about him.
yes, he did. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Yeah, he was a hardcore racer. He spent a lot of money on the deal, but he he had his thoughts on how it ought to be, and I'm not so sure that I would be different if it was mine. So, but so.
Okay, so since I got you here, Bernie, I got to ask you one question. I know this is off of our topic with Terry, but I have to ask you this. I believe it was Baton Rouge, right?
Yeah.
Gary's chasing the championship. Larry
Yeah.
and Gary end up in the final together. What happened to Gary's car? What made it so he couldn't?
One of those. Gary's car was. I mean, it was running good, and Larry might be not so good. I'm not sure, but anyway, we broke a fitting, fuel pressure fitting, and on Gary's car, and that was all. It signed off, and so
You
uh,
didn't throw the race. You didn't throw the race.
no, we no, it was not to be. I mean, we sure could have used those points, but that's the way it is. It's maybe, it depends if you agree with the concept of team cars and all that stuff. So I don't know. Our attempt at it wasn't successful. Let's put it that
Well, the
way.
funny thing about that was up until that point, me as a fan watching this, Diamond P or whatever it was we were watching then, it never occurred to me that one racer would actually throw a race for his teammate. And the thing about it was so obvious because Larry was trying to throw that race, and it was like, wow, it was a unique moment for me. I remember as a fan.
Well, it wasn't rehearsed because it was obvious the way it turned out. So there was no plan. It was just that Gary's car was running better, and it should have won. And we had lane choice and all the whole deal, and everything was going our way until it wasn't.
I'm going through all of your bio history here, and you're in is it the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame? Is that what that is up there?
Well, yes, I think that was the first induction in 2002, the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame. And then I got inducted into the Edmonton Sports Hall of Fame, which is virtually, everybody says, what the hell are you? Are you a track and field guy or a baseball player or a hockey player? But, racing and drag racing specifically in Edmonton is a sport. I mean, it's big time, and it was before, and it still is. So that's, because of my accomplishments, I got inducted in there in 2008. And then in, let me think, I guess 2015, I got inducted into the Drag Racing Hall of Fame. And then here in 2022, the newly formed the Western Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame. So, there's lots of fame and lots of halls, but like I say that, and a buck won't buy a coffee, but still it's a privilege to be in all those venues.
So what was it because of all of you guys that were up there in Canada, this whole group of outstanding racers? When did Senair, that track Molson, when did that come into existence? And was that pushed by you guys up there, or was that something that came out of the NHRA themselves? I mean,
that was NHRA themselves, and that was Eastern Canada, which is, Eastern Canada and Western Canada are like two different countries almost. The East, they figure they're pretty hot and so on and so forth.
Canadian Hall of Fames, and we kind of led into Senair with that whole group up there. And Bernie, I'm looking through my paperwork here and I can't find it now, but you're in several of those Hall of Fames up in Canada also. I know that you're in the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame too also.
Yes, I'm in the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, I guess it is, and the Drag Racing Hall of Fame. That's Canadian diverge and international, and Garlet Steel, and I guess apparently I got grandfathered into the Western Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Bernie and I both got grandfathered into that, and that's inaugural was last year, and it'll be not this fall, but the next fall we'll have another group of inductees. Ron Hudson and myself are two of the fellows that are the directors, and actually Ron and I pretty well spearheaded that thing to get it to happen, and it's quite successful, and we've got some good members in there, and of course we automatically transferred anybody that was in the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame and the Drag Racing Hall of Fame into the Western Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame. That's where that all ended up.
Yeah. And the Wheeler Dealer car. Now, is this the one? I discussed wheel pants with you. We actually had a big episode on wheel pants, and that's what prompted Steve Gibbs to call me, because we talked to Tommy Ivo. I talked to Pat Dakin. I talked to Jim Walther. I talked to Steve Gibbs. I talked to, I forget all the people I talked to about wheel pants. It was a neat episode. Anyway.
Yeah, I saw that under your dry hops.
Yeah, it was, you know what? And I came across this piece of footage of the Mendez crash with that rocket car down at Gainesville. And did some clips out of it. And well, apparently it was a smashing success. But anyway, the wheeler dealer car with the wheel pants on, is that the one that's in the museum right now?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's in the Western Canadian Museum, the Reynolds Museum, but it's owned now by the Alberta government. So it's making tours to various museums. Actually, it's right at present. It's in just the museum in Edmonton. Previous to that, it was in a museum in Drumheller, which is predominantly dinosaurs. So I was, somebody says, "Hey, your wheeler dealer car is in the dinosaur museum." I said, "I suppose there's a picture right beside me there." And he said, "No."
So
Anyway,
what all went into the? I mean, did you restore that car? Or was somebody else responsible for restoring
no,
that?
Sean Dill actually did the work. Sean Dill has been on several teams before, and he's in Indianapolis, a neighbor of Bernie's that works for Waterman down there. But a doctor out of Winnipeg, Dr. Brian Friesen, actually was visiting some guy's garage, and they were having a couple of beers or something, and Dr. Friesen noticed that under the bench there was a quick change rear end. And he says, "What the hell is that?" type of thing. And the guy said, "Well, that's a quick change rear end that was in Terry Capp's wheeler dealer car." And he says, "How do you know that?" He says, "Because I owned it." And he said, "Do you still own it?" He says, "No, but I know the guy that does." So anyway, it was left at that. And then Dr. Friesen, he followed up and made some phone calls and did some visits and such. And the fella pretty well said, "Yeah, that's it. We chopped the front end off. We made it a little shorter and we put a Chevy in it and on and on and on." And he says, "Well, was it the wheeler dealer car or what's left that's the wheeler dealer car?" And he said, "Well, the roll cage." So that was good enough for Dr. Friesen. And he undertook to buy that car. But previous to that, he phones me and he said, "I think I found your old race car." But you wouldn't imagine how many times I've had somebody call and say, "I think we found your old race car. I've got one of your race cars." And if that would be the fact, we've gone through hundreds of them. But nonetheless, there was a couple of ways that he could identify that car. And one of them was take the grip off the steering wheel, the wood grip, and see if there's a number in there. And he said, "Oh, I'll do that next time I'm over there." So he goes and he checks with this guy and he takes the grip off and he said, "Yeah, there's a number. It's 627." I said, "Well, the steering wheel is right." Anyway, to make a long story short, he said, would I be in agreement if he undertook to restore that car? And I said, "No, God, I'd be honored." So that took quite a while, and Bernie can attest to that. I mean, Sean Dill, he wanted the same pistons in it, the same Manley valves. Everything had to be exactly the same. So, between Sean Dill and Bernie and myself and Wes Van Duzen, we're trying to, there's pictures and they're doing investigations. They're looking at various photos that NHRA has, and amateur photographer pictures, so on and so forth. And it got to the point where I was getting tired answering Sean Dill's questions. The last one that I remember that stuck with me, he says, "Okay, what color was the reverser cable?" And I'm thinking, okay, Morse cables are either gray, red, or black. I said, "Nah, the car is red and silver. Who knows? Red. Okay, fine." 3 days later, he says, "Bullshit. It was black. No, it was gray. I found a close-up copy of it." So that's the way that car went together, even to the wheel pants. And
Wow.
and then in the interim, Brian spent a ton of money on restoring this car. We cackled it at Bowling Green, which was an experience in itself, and of course at the Hot Rod Reunion, and Gibbs was involved with it at that point in time, so we cackled it there. As a matter of fact, I said to Steve, I said, "What's the chances of us pulling this thing up to the starting line, and I'll just do a burnout and just shut it off, right?" Steve says, "Well, we'll see what we can do, but we really can't do that." And before it even got to the point, everybody that had a nostalgia car there wanted to do the same thing. So, Steve said, "God, sorry, Cap, we can't make this happen," which was fine. We cackled it there, and then it sat in the museum at the LA County Fairgrounds in NHRA's museum for a period of time. And then, like I said, we took it to Baton Rouge or to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we fired it there, and it was a nice reception there and everything else. And then it came back to Indianapolis, which we cackled it there and brought it back to Canada. And basically, the doctor says, I'm done with this thing. It's your problem now. I'm going to donate it to the museum, and I'd like you to make the presentation of such. So that's what happened.
Bernie, what was your involvement in the restoration? Was it mainly focusing on the engine, or how were you involved?
I did a lot of
Research.
I did a lot of work, and came kind of with a net result that I don't remember, or I can't believe I don't remember this, but or well, I know where to look or something. Sean is a, oh man, he's a pit bull when it comes to chasing down the details. He's got way more patience for it than I did, but he did an amazing job, and yeah, the guy's a real talent.
Bernie, were you down at Bowling Green and at Bakersfield when they cackled that thing?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't.
Out on the road touring?
Apparently so. Yeah, I wouldn't have missed it otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I was down at Bowling Green last year, and the Cackle Fest has kind of shrunk a little bit, and I see the NHRA has made some changes to the hot rod reunion and to Bowling Green, and I'm not sure what the future is of all of that, but I give I have to take my hats off to Steve Gibbs for what he's done with that Nitro Revival to continue sort of the theme of what he started with the hot rod reunion. I don't know if you guys have any comments on that or not.
When I first heard from you and from Henry Walther, I was contemplating going to that, but I'm still working, so the work deal got in the way type of deal. But I definitely would put that on my whatever it is, that list, and try to hit that up maybe even next year, because Beck goes to that and a bunch of those old hot rodders and such, and I'm kind of a hot rodder at heart too. I've got a few cars. Well, that first 32 Ford is sitting in the garage here behind me, so that's just a testament to the hot rod type of thing. So, but it seemed like a hell of a deal. I followed as much as I could online, and it's something that somebody should do, obviously.
Yeah. Well, the neat thing about it, and I never had the chance to get to the California Hot Rod reunion. Like I said, I went to Bowling Green, but the thing that was fascinating to me about it was, and actually John Force showed up this year. Steve Gibbs was running around in the golf cart, and he was in the autograph session. But the thing that occurred to me was that it was not so much an event about drag racing. It was like a family reunion, and that's what the video that I put out when I got back from there, that's what I called it, was a drag racing family reunion. And the atmosphere was, you guys, I mean, just the brotherhood. And I know you guys were all competitors back in the day, but now it just feels like you're all a big family.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. You hear from these guys every once in a while, and then watching your website and such, it brings back a lot of memories too. Like with Carl Olson, and we had a lot of fun with Mike Poole and him. That was like a black and white type of deal. Carl such a straight-laced guy and business type of thing, and Cool was as far the other way as you could possibly go, but a hell of a guy. You've got all these other fellas that we've raced with previously, and Bernie has quite a bit. It's nice to go to some of the events and see guys like Marvin Graham and that you haven't seen for a little while, and it's just it's nice.
Last year, if I remember right, the car count was 72. There was 72 fuel cars, nostalgia cars on the property. It was a hell of a deal, and I don't know how they're going to top themselves this year. But yeah, Terry, yeah, I mean, you should hook up with Gary Beck. I mean, he came down last year, brought both of his hot rods down. You guys should come down there together.
Yeah. Well, I could drive one of his hot rods there, but I'm sure as hell not bringing any of mine that far. But Gary did show up in Canada for called Deuce Days here. It's going to be what 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, where we did take our Deuce truck to that race, and that was or not race to that car show. It's phenomenal. But no, I keep in touch with Becky. You know, I ran across a guy that had a bunch of trains, so I thought, you know, I better let Beck know there might be something he needs to add to his collection.
He sent me a couple of videos of his train set and his like, holy crap.
God, it's nuts. And I think Bernie, you've seen it when you were in California, probably, but he's expanded that considerably.
Yeah, 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 I've seen his videos and stuff, and man, well, it's Gary. You know, I mean, he's
He did.
meticulous and ingenious, and he really did a job with that stuff. Wow, I'm not sure I understand it exactly, but it looks like fun. But I don't know, man. It's a lot of interesting things to be pursued, you know, and I'm not sure that would be high on my bucket list, but hey, whatever.
Well, just so you know, I messaged Gary a couple days ago. I said, "Hey, this interview is going to finally happen." He said he sent back to me. He's like, "Good, I got a whole bunch of my friends that are waiting to see this one."
Yeah, right. Yeah, great.
So, you, Bernie, Bernie, I got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
I noticed this when I went back and watched the U.S. Nationals again last night, just so I knew what I was doing. You always had a, a fuel bottle in your hand. And
Yep.
when Terry would be backing the car up, you'd be squirting fuel in that injector. You're the only person I ever saw do that. Why were you doing that?
Well, we probably had the fuel system all messed up, and the only way we could keep it running didn't know how to make a good idle circuit, you know.
Well,
Well,
now
there's an
there's an
honest
answer.
answer.
Yeah. Well, I think that particular car, uh, the way that fuel tank was designed, there was a baffle that wasn't quite in the right place. See, that was one of the first B-52s that Al Swindle built
Yeah.
between Ruth's and ours, right? And no, Bernie had that bottle going all the time. I actually thought when I saw that, I thought it was water, and maybe he was going to give me a shot in the face to wake me up or something. But anyway,
Wait, okay. So, maybe we're not done. I got to ask both of you this question. The Al Swindle chassis. I mean, Gary Beck said too, because I asked Gary, there was a period of time from about 78 to what would you say, 80, 81, 77 to 80 or 81, where the top fuel sport was just sort of stagnant. Garlett's had that, Cinderella run that he had where he blasted the ET, but during that period of time, there was really no advancement until the Swindle chassis came out. Did that thing really make a difference for everybody?
Bernie.
Yeah, I would say yes. They were kind of a modern car. You know, before we kept doing the same thing over and over again, and we were able to incorporate some new or some fresh ideas into the way the layout of the cars and whatever, and the front ends and the interchangeability of parts was a big deal. You know, if you were somewhere off in the Thule somewhere and you knocked an A arm off it or something, you could have an A arm the next day or something, and it would fit. So Swindle did a great job of that, and they just worked well, and of course once you got a few good cars running them, well then they just snowballed. He couldn't, I don't know how long the waiting list was, but I'm sure it was pretty substantial, and because that was a standard. If you went out and you had a Swindle car and you had these particular components and you did and it didn't run well, you had to look in the mirror,
Well, I do know that once that Swindle chassis came into existence, with the boxy frame, that's when the sport started to progress again. There was that stagnant period in there until Swindle came along with that chassis. So apparently something changed.
Well, Bernie spent a lot of time in Tacoma at Swindle's shop prior to us picking that car up. it was typical, like all the chassis builders. Yeah, it's just about ready, and you get there and there's a bunch of pipe on the ground type of thing. But bending and welding. But Brad Hadman was an employee at Swindle's at the time, and he's been a successful chassis builder since then. So he was involved with that. And Bernie and one of our crew guys, Al, they spent quite a bit of time putting that car together. And it, as far as I was concerned, it worked very well. It was a dream to drive, and except for the habit of picking up the front end a little bit all the time, it just definitely cruised it right along. And it was like Bernie said, it was easy to work on. And if you did damage something, you could call them and they'd say, okay, we'll send it over here. But we loved that car.
What exactly did that chassis do to change the center of gravity or something that made the sport be able to progress like that?
Well, it used to hump up in the middle when you hit the throttle,
Yeah.
so the front wheels should have been planted, and the back wheels definitely were, and it would just hump up in the middle and make it. I don't know. I think, Bernie, the uprights were wisely chosen in their placement, I think, and whatever that it tested to, and of course the degree of the engine and where it was in the chassis was quite instrumental.
Yeah, it pretty well covers it. It was just a happy combination as far as race cars go. It fit a lot of people's combination without a lot of additional work. You could be rest assured that you're going to have something when you had something from one of these current Swindle cars.
I appreciate you doing this with me. I hope to see both of you somewhere along the way, maybe out at Irwindale, California this fall or something. I'm going to be at Bowling Green again this year, so doing some filming. But just out of curiosity, what do you guys think? What's the future of the NHRA look like? What's your opinion on it?
Bernie?
Well, they're obviously working real hard and trying to get things squared away. There's a lot of new blood in the sponsorship deals, and a lot of new faces and just in general and the fuel ranks. And I think that maybe I'm just the eternal optimist, but I'm not saying it's going to all the problems are going to be solved, but they're working on it. I guess it's and will there always be agreements and disagreements, and as for who's got the best approach, I don't know. I know I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions, but there's certainly some stuff that's good coming out of all this, but whether or not it's the answer or too little, too late, I don't know. A lot of these tracks closing bother me. It's kind of sad to see them, but.
Well, I will tell you this. I was thrilled to death to see Gainesville, had a huge crowd there, and so did Wild Horse Pass.
Right.
It was thrilling to see that. Pomona, again, I don't know what the issue is out there. The birthplace of drag racing, basically. We can't fill that stadium out there. I just don't understand that.
Yeah, we've been saying that for years. I mean, there's been good years there, but it's been quite a while since they had a real barn burner.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm thrilled about. Joliet's back. That's my closest NHRA race, and we used to go down there every year. I'm so glad to see that come back this year.
Yes, yeah, I'll say. Yeah.
I've got, I believe I actually have some video of you and Austin working on that car down at Joliet quite a few years back. It's actually been quite a few years ago.
Yeah, that was usually an interesting race because Coyle had a lot of friends and relatives there. Well, more friends than relatives, but we always had a lot of visitors, guys from his past and the guys he raced with, and it was kind of fun, for us.
Yeah, I'm just glad it's back. So I'm going to be down there this year like normal, planted in the seats or hanging out in the pits. Paul Brown, that owns the Doug's Headers Corvair now, that restored that car. He's a
Oh,
buddy.
yeah.
He's a buddy of mine. They've asked him to bring that car down there for part of their, the historical
Oh,
thing. So I'll be hanging out with him.
Oh,
oh,
that'll be
yeah.
neat. We'll
Yeah.
we'll be watching for you on
I'll make sure
HRA
I wave at
TV.
the camera.
Yeah.
I'll wear my shirt and make sure I can somehow manage to get my face on TV.